Hey, good morning, everybody. I know most of you guys. My name is Gary Fitzke, and this is my wonderful wife, Kathy.
Thank you.
Oh, an applause. That's pretty good. We are here this morning to share our trip to the Mediterranean, specifically 4 of 12 days when we were in the Holy Land. And I was telling Pastor before I got up here, normally, like everybody else, I dread speaking in public. But all week long, I've been so excited about reliving these 4 days of this trip and sharing with you our photos and observations. And so we practiced it twice yesterday, and it's about an hour long. So hang with us. In 1 hour, we'll have you out home into your warm homes, and I hope you enjoy this trip. It segues so nicely into what Pastor just talked about. It's kind of crazy. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, so we'll begin. We took this trip back towards the end of May, beginning of June, 12-day trip with Princess Cruises, who subs out their tour guides. Highly recommend the tour guides. The goals of the presentation today are to bring the biblical events to life by describing actual location and events that occurred there. I've got some doubting Thomas in me, like some people, and just being there and touching things just brings things to life for me, and it did. And I encourage you to go to Israel on your next vacation or adventure. Don't let CNN make your travel plans for you. Don't let the news make you afraid. I mean, can you imagine being in Israel and looking at the Kansas City news every day? They would never come here. So, same thing holds true. Israel is a very modern country. It's about as big as Vermont, very small country. So, we're able to cover a lot. I'm a little out of breath because I'm so excited. Let me go to the next step. I'm gonna take you to 11 different locations in Israel where Kat and I went to. The grotto where John wrote Revelations. That was crazy. Ephesus Library, Ephesus, Turkey. Church of the Beatitudes, Church of the Multiplication, St. Peter's House at an archaeological site in Capernaum. Capernaum is not a metropolitan area like Nazareth has become or Jerusalem. It's an archaeological site. The Jordan River, Church of the Annunciation, where Mary was visited by Gabriel. Garden of Gethsemane, there's a Church of the Agony, Via Dolorosa, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and Church of the Nativity. So 11 locations. But before I begin our journey, every time I talk to a group of people, I do my public service announcements for things Kat and I care about. And the first one is Khan Academy. If you have kids, Khan Academy was started by a guy from MIT who was trying to help his niece across the country learn algebra and calculus. It's funded by Bill Gates. You could homeschool yourself or your children, kindergarten through college, with this website. It's free. It'll be free forever. Bill Gates funds it. It's fantastic. Go and visit the site, especially if you have kids and you don't know how to help them with their homework. World Vision Gifts. My catalog's over there, but instead of Kat and I giving each other stuff every year, there's a World Vision catalog of gifts. So I'll give Kat a gift, but we're really giving the gift to a poor town in Africa or other poor nation of chickens or goats or a pond, something to help them live and sustain their lives and make it better. So highly recommend World Vision catalog for gift giving. And locally, Olive's Hope, for those of you guys who know me on Facebook, if Olive Hope gets a lost dog or cat, I'll share it, and people can go and see and help shelter the critters that we love. One organization I do not support, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. What they should call it, in all honesty, is people who think animals should be treated the same as people. It's really an odd organization. It sounds good because everybody loves critters. If you're going to support the critters, support a local shelter with the animals. But not PETA. It's a really bad group, radical group. Do not support them. These are not necessarily the views of Hillsdale Presbyterian Church. Right. Right. But before we begin, you're going to hear me use a lot of terms, and these are Kat and Gary research terms, because before we go on trips, we like to know what we're looking at. So there's a couple things we evaluate: archaeological significance, archaeologically correct. I'll use that term a lot. I got to slow down. This is so much fun. And tradition, word of mouth. And, a lot of people would think archaeology, well, that trumps tradition and word of mouth. And I say not necessarily, because I stopped to think about this. Take away the TVs, the radio, the lights, and the motors, and think about what your lives would be like. And I think about what their lives were like 2,000 years ago on the north end of the Sea of Galilee. You have a small stone home, and you've just gotten done fishing all day, and the sun's gone down, and you light your oil lamp, and it's quiet. There's not cars and motors and stuff going around, and you can see all the stars. And so what do they have to entertain themselves? Each other, maybe music, storytelling. And so every night, how many stories can you tell? They would be telling the story of this person named Jesus who, right over there, at that rock right there, that's where he multiplied the fishes and loaves. He fed 5,000 people. Every night, all these stories would be told over just 3 or 4 generations before around 300 AD. People started building churches to commemorate these locations. And that's, for the most part, where Kat and I visited. And I'll go into more of that later. So I hold a lot of stock in tradition and word of mouth because of those things. Another thing that struck me, and I'm going to talk about a lot, is proximity. Israel is about as big as Vermont. So in your mind, when you're reading the Bible, you think the distance between Bethlehem and Jerusalem is a long way. It's less than 10 miles. It's very close, a very short drive. So the proximity of everything. The distance between the site of the crucifixion and the tomb is from the parking lot here over to the bridge. And in my mind, I was thinking, the next county, separated those two. Everything's really close together. And the guides are invaluable. Princess Cruises contracts out the guides. The guides were unbelievable, and if you do go, you have to use them. They're invaluable. The first one in North Israel was a great archaeologist, had his master's in archaeology, and the guy to the south, Adrian, he was a master storyteller. So he embellished all the wow moments by telling these great stories. Like I said, it was a 12-day cruise through the Mediterranean. We flew into Athens, Greece, over to Turkey, Israel, Egypt, and then up to Italy. So 5 countries in 12 days. I'm just going to talk about a little bit of Greece, a little bit of Turkey, and a lot of Israel. What else? Okay. Our first stop was on the island of Patmos to visit the grotto where John wrote Revelations. And Kat and I were so excited, kind of like I am now. The ship pulls into the harbor, and because the ship cannot port directly in, you took a little shuttle boat about as big as this room to go into and disembark. So we were so excited, going to see John in the grotto of the Revelation. And we get into the disembark, and it's about a 10-minute trip. We get there, and, all right, where's the cab? Going to go up the mountain to see the grotto. You got the money? No, I got we got to go all the way back to the ship. So we came back and took a cab up the side of this mountain where the grotto is. And this is the entrance to the grotto. That's a newer mosaic. It's not a 1,000-year-old mosaic that's there, but, for the pilgrims making pilgrimage and tourists. So beautiful mosaic there that's simply front ends the grotto area. This is the grotto itself. I, John, your brother and fellow partaker in the tribulation and kingdom and perseverance which are in Jesus, was on the island called Patmos because of the word of God and testimony of Jesus. This is where, correct me if I'm wrong, John didn't write Revelations, he dictated it, to be correct. This is where it occurred. When we first got there, there was a tour group. The place was crowded. But then they left, and it was just Kat and I in the cave where Revelations was written. So that was our first wow moment on this trip. We're looking at each other and go, wow. And then quietly, I think it was a Greek Orthodox group came in. They were kissing the floor of the cave and just total reverence for this location. And so we just sat there, took it all in as we did the whole trip. This is a view right outside the grotto, probably what John was looking at during his time there. The bay, that's where the ship was, and where we disembarked. But this was his view while he was there. There was a hole cut in the side of the cave where he was imprisoned. That night, we got on the ship, and we were supposed to stop at another Greek island, but the weather was really bad, so we went on to Turkey. Ephesus is probably second to Jerusalem as far as importance in the New Testament. And Ephesus is one of the largest outdoor archaeological sites in the world. And everywhere you looked were these beautiful ruins. Ephesus was actually, there were 3 cities of Ephesus because of the silting that occurred at the mouth of the river. The city planners had to move the city 3 times. This is the library where Timothy, Paul, or John could have been or visited at any time. So that was neat to be there for that. This is the Colosseum where Paul spoke to the Ephesians. Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus, by the will of God, to the saints who are at Ephesus and who are faithful in Jesus Christ. So that was neat. What the Turks did, though, is they modernized the area, kind of like one of the amphitheaters here where rock concerts occurred. And as late as the 80s, Elton John and Sting were singing in there, the place where Paul had spoken to the Ephesians. But they realized the damage they were doing to the archaeological site, and it was crumbling. And so they stopped doing that since the 80s. We went to the 3rd city of Ephesus, and visited the remains of what was a beautiful synagogue, and where John is interred, the Apostle John. So that was a moment. And near the base of where he is entombed is that baptismal there. So beautiful, beautiful area there in Ephesus. One last thing about Turkey is they're good business people and want to bank on tourism. And so they started this thing. I told Pastor this before we left on the trip. Hey, did you know Mary is interred in Turkey? And she just kind of looked at me and go, oh, really? They started this detour tour to, they call it Mary's house. This is where Mary lived while she was with John in Turkey. Archaeological evidence does not support that. Mary is in fact believed to be interred in Jerusalem. So I would not recommend the Mary house in Turkey. This is another beautiful view of one of the streets in Ephesus. Look at the beautiful mosaics in the street level there. And that modern-looking building in the background, that's where they built as a shelter to really get into the nitty-gritty of the archaeological site.